morning. Thank you, Arnie, for the introduction and for hosting this great annual reunion of the Foreign Affairs family. It's really a pleasure to be here today to talk a little bit about the department's management and resource priorities. But before I do that, I want to start and thank you for all that you have done to contribute to this institution in your careers and currently. And I know the Director General has said it, and we just heard Undersecretary Shannon say it. It's so important and so powerful. You are the best advocates and recruiters for the State Department, for foreign affairs generally, and your support and engagement is really critical. I know you'll hear today from several speakers, including the Secretary, on the priorities that the U.S. is facing around the world in addressing global challenges. So I thought I'd just take a few minutes to talk about some of the mechanics behind how we are turning those priorities into action. First of all, the thing I think a lot about, and what you all know is really important, is that resources are fundamental to everything that we do. And especially now, demand for U.S. leadership is very high around the world. And yet we are operating in a constrained budget environment. We have many complicated and emerging global challenges to address, such as the refugee and migration crisis, the expansion of violent extremist networks, climate change, health threats like Ebola and Zika. And as Secretary Kerry has said, American leadership on these issues is critical, and it can't just be turned on with the flick of a switch. You need to make investments in foreign affairs and in our diplomatic efforts, and they must be backed up by resources. In recent weeks, it's been sort of an interesting time on this topic. We've had a range of leaders, from Bono to retired flag officers to bipartisan members of Congress, make the case for an increase in foreign affairs spending. And they note that foregoing these investments in prevention and development now forces us to spend more money on security and stability in the future. And this is a really important point that we need to continue to make in support of our foreign affairs budget. So I talked a little bit about these increasingly complex challenges, and the reality is, since 2010, our budget has stayed relatively steady, just about the same amount over the last several years, just 1% of the entire federal budget. And in some respects, that's not too bad. Many agencies have faced a cut over the last few years in their funding, so we're pleased that we haven't. But the reality is, within this flatlined budget, we are forced to make some challenging trade-offs. And sometimes we have to respond to immediate needs at the expense of more strategic or longer-term investments. So just to do a little bit of detail on the budget, I promise I won't get too wonky on it. Last year, Congress reached a deal called the Bipartisan Budget Act that set top-line funding levels for the current fiscal year and the next fiscal year, 16 and 17. And that was great because it helped us avoid the really devastating impacts of sequestration. But the deal also had a mechanism that shifted a lot of our core or enduring budget resources into OCO, or the Overseas Contingency Operations part of our budget. And that's okay for this year and next year, and we'll get through, but the real risk is that going forward, that OCO account, which is very high on our base budget, which is much smaller than we'd like it to be, could get out of balance, and that the OCO funding could be reduced. And it's a really important issue because it has huge implications for our ability to carry out our mission, particularly when we're facing such a range of complicated crises. So we continue to engage with Congress and other stakeholders on this concern and others regarding our resources, but I thought it was important to spend a few minutes this morning on our budget context and on the risks that we face going forward, because it's so essential to what we do, and because we really count on your help in making the case to members of Congress, to the American people, and the networks that you're a part of, that our investment, the foreign affairs budget, foreign assistance resources, are in our national interest, that it's only 1% of the federal budget, and it's absolutely vital to our nation's security and prosperity. At the same time that we're working to secure the resources that we need, we're also investing in the tools and technology and training that we know we need to update and keep current so that we can operate effectively in the world, in the changing world. So a year ago, Secretary Kerry released the second Quadrennial Diplomacy and Development Review, the QDDR. And this QDDR, Secretary Clinton did the first one a few years ago, really seeks to serve as a blueprint for updating our policies and our management priorities so that we can look beyond the day-to-day challenges at strategic and operational priorities. So this last QDDR focuses on 4 strategic priorities for state and aid. The first is preventing conflict and violent extremism. The second is promoting open democratic societies. The third is advancing inclusive economic growth. And the fourth is mitigating and adapting to climate change. And the QDDR also has a focus on the need to make our department more dynamic and adaptive and innovative. So we're looking at harnessing the latest technology and helping our officers around the world collaborate more effectively together, working to ensure that we can put the right people with the right skills in the right places at the right time and be much more agile, and to ensure that we're taking steps to retain the top flight workforce that comes to the State Department. And we know that we have to invest in employees. We need to ensure that we're providing the leadership and mentoring that both Tom and Arnie have spoken about, and that we are empowering and enabling our officers to balance their work and their personal lives. One QDDR priority that I wanted to share with you is related to how we store, access, and retain information. So, you know, knowledge and relationships are vital to the work that we do, but too frequently that information is trapped in someone's head or on a hard drive, and as they transition from post to post, bureau to bureau, that information gets lost or only partially transmitted. So if you think about, as I do frequently, our upcoming transfer season in which a third of our officers will move to different posts or positions, we know we don't have a systematic mechanism to help transfer that information and ensure that it's easily accessible to the person who's coming behind them, and that the impact of that is to slow our policy engagement or our diplomacy to function in a less efficient way than we know we can. So to address this very complicated challenge, which is both a cultural one and a technological one, we brought in a design firm to really review our processes and our systems. And they have, we've worked with them, and they've really laid out a very powerful vision for us to follow that will enable us to manage our information, our content, our contacts, make it a useful tool to collaborate. And so we are working with a very dedicated team across the department, several bureaus now, to advance and implement that vision. Another important priority in the QDDR and in our FY17 budget is investing in our people and ensuring that we have a diverse and inclusive workforce. And this is something that the DG is very focused on, that we're working on together with many, many leaders in this department, including with the National Security Council and with Congress, who are very focused on ensuring we're doing everything we can to have a workforce that looks like America as we engage around the world. So all of these priorities that I mentioned today, and I want to be brief so we can get to some questions, are critical to our moving forward and are also important to share with all of you, because we really do view the people in this room as important stakeholders in ensuring we can meet these goals, both from the experience you've had, the perspective you can offer, the leadership lessons, the firsthand accounts, the engagements with members of Congress, the American people, and stakeholders. So greatly appreciate the opportunity to share some of those priorities with you this morning. And again, we're very grateful for your being here and for contributing to these many, many important efforts. Thank you.
Please have a seat at the mic. We'll have time for 2 questions, I'm sorry.
Lynn Martin, USIA retiree and currently WAE over in the FOIA operation. This is about the hacking of the OPM personal data. I'm one of the millions of federal employees affected. What steps, since OPM has shown it is not capable of protecting this personal data, what steps is the department taking to take ownership of this responsibility for department employees and retirees?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your ongoing work on FOIA. It is a really important part of what we're doing, and as we talk about in the budget context, also a priority area to increase resources and ensure that we can more effectively perform that work. On the question of the OPM data breach, I would just say in general on cybersecurity across the entire federal government, we are working hard to ensure that the type of breach experienced at OPM, those that have happened here, we are capable of preventing and responding to. It's a major line of effort directed by the White House, certainly within the State Department as well. Specifically in terms of the OPM data, I think there's hardly anyone you have worked with or worked with in the past and the present who has not been impacted by this. It's really disturbing. OPM has, for their own agency, taken many important steps to secure their information. We are doing the same thing, and we do our own background check process here, as folks know, and we retain that information, and we are both ensuring whatever information resides at OPM is much more securely stored than it has been, and we're taking very comprehensive and serious steps and systems upgrades to ensure our information is protected. I see some of our colleagues here from IRM. It's a IRM DS. It's a very important priority. We have now regular meetings at very senior levels to review our progress across all of our cybersecurity priorities. So I think the focus on cybersecurity, both because of what's happened and because of the sophistication of malicious actors, just requires that this is at the top of our agenda. Thank you.
Question?
Yep. Thank you for speaking to us. My name is Peter Shutley, and the question is about the State Department budget. And you gave us sort of a general overview. But my question is if you could name some specific anecdotes, specific things that the department really wants to do that it can't do because of budget stringencies. Those kind of anecdotes have more impact on members of Congress or the public than just the budget. I mean, 2 examples. After the end of the Cold War in Embassy Tokyo, we lacked the money. We had to turn off the heat for the water in the embassy. There was no hot water in the embassy. And that simple little anecdote had significantly more impact with visiting CODELs and stuff than all kinds of numbers. So my question to you is, can you give us some anecdotes or examples rather than just we're only 1% of the budget?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And I hadn't ever thought about strategically making the water cold or turning the heat off when members visit, but it's maybe something we can think about. There are many, and I think we can provide examples. We can also customize them to the interests of particular members. One that is, I think, at the top of our list, and I know our colleagues from USAID and many on the Hill, is that because of the amount of money we're receiving in some areas and some of the priorities and immediate needs that we have in dealing with crises around the world, our investments in our democracy and governance programs, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, are nowhere near where they should be. So when we go and we put together our strategic plans and priorities with posts, and they see these are the things we want to do, we find a major imbalance in those investments. And those are less the pressing needs and more what we know are the strategic investments we should make. So we have countless examples like that. Another area that we're very focused on, the Secretary is very focused on, is the increased resources needed to take the fight to ISIL the way we want to. And that includes obviously working closely with the Pentagon, but there are very specific needs within that. So really, we could take almost any section of the budget and be able to say what trade-offs we're having to make. And we do have those conversations with Congress, and we have them in a strategic way to respond to the interests that they have and to try to show what those gaps are. But fundamentally, without seeing an increase in our top line as we face these myriad challenges, and without the regular use of supplementals, which is how Congress traditionally has helped us deal with and adapt to emerging needs, we're having to make those types of trade-offs. So we can certainly provide good examples in really almost any area.